Hello, this is Archaeologic with Destiny Lab and Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo. A while back we put out a podcast. It was actually podcast episode number 9 of Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo, talking about DMT in the pineal gland. And at the end of that podcast, I had collected about a half hour worth of testimonies of people who had actually taken DMT and what their experiences were like. And these people relayed information that was very similar to the information told by people that have so-called alien abduction experiences or sleep paralysis or out-of-body experiences or the information gathered through seances and Ouija boards and spirit guides and channeled information. All these things seem to coincide and tell the same lies, that Christianity is false, that Jesus was misunderstood, that we ourselves can be gods, that reincarnation is true, and that through works of some sort or secret knowledge you can become enlightened, and that you can live forever somehow, through this, these ecstatic states. Now, for some reason, this last half hour of testimonies was just removed from that podcast, and I don't know if it was a glitch. I don't know if YouTube removed it, and I didn't know it was gone until months later when I told someone to go listen to those testimonies, and they said that wasn't there. So I am now re-releasing just these testimonies on their own for people to listen to. This is for people questioning what DMT is about, who these entities are, and what the universal theme seems to be. The universal theme seems to gear toward people's ego, make them think that they can somehow, ascend by dying. It gears toward the inherent knowledge that we should be born again. And we know that through Christ, that we should be born again. Well, these entities tell them, you must allow the serpent to swallow you. You must jump into the abyss. You must go through these torments and hellish experiences with these entities tormenting you and snakes entering into your body. And you will hear these experiences. They're all horrible experiences, and that somehow this makes people enlightened or feel like new when they are done with it. Well, they're probably becoming possessed by demons. And the difference is between that type of possession and the possession of the Holy Spirit of Christ actually lasts. Where if you hear these people's testimonies, it wears off, and they have to go back time and time again and take more DMT and go deeper and deeper into these trance-like states that just sucks them into these occult belief system and doctrines, where till eventually they literally become Satanists and Luciferians. And that is literally the testimony of what people have been dragged into. This is a rabbit hole to the demonic realm. It's not enlightenment, and it's not something that should be messed with. You listen to these testimonies and you make the decision. Does this stuff sound like something that makes you enlightened, or does it sound like deceptions of the enemy? Does it sound like demonic doctrine? You decide.
The plant spirits had literally possessed my body, and they were inside me, trying to get all this dark energy, negative energy, out of my system. I completely believe that. That's exactly how it felt. Something was in there trying to get everything out. And to this day, I feel I held it all in, and I had this, I called it my little black box, right here in my chest. Black box of just past emotional crap. And I feel like it was completely opened up, and a lot of it came out. I don't think all of it is out, but a lot came out. If you are thinking of going to take ayahuasca, I feel like it is important to know that it can be really awesome and really blissful and peaceful, but it can also be extremely terrifying, and you might feel like you're gonna die. But as long as you're with a shaman that you can trust, and you know you can trust, then you'll be safe, and just believe that nothing bad's gonna happen, and it won't.
My body felt very tingly, and it was vibrating, buzzing, and it's kind of creepy. But after a while, I felt my body just become possessed and just taken over with the spirit of ayahuasca, and it told me to stand up and walk outside. And it was really hard to walk at first. I felt very dizzy and wobbly, and I kind of felt almost like the way I was walking, I felt like an animal or some sort of like creature. It was really interesting.
It was intense and dark, and what started happening is snakes started coming in through the jungle. I had visions of snakes, and they would look at me and then immediately start savagely like going inside my body and like eating my organs, eating my throat, like going down my throat and eating their way out and like exploding through my body. And I know enough from psychedelic experiences to just witness and allow and just let it happen. Divine and death was going to take me there. I had a feeling.
Okay, well, explain these snakes. Do they look like real snakes?
No, they were more like, they were a bit ephemeral. They would change too much in color. And the way that they would come was not necessarily slithering on the ground. They were coming from the air.
And they all had top hats on.
And what did they look like?
Snakes.
What did they look like?
A lot of them were kind of white. They looked actually more like boas or like anacondas. The colors were off. They were not. They were either too colorful or they're white. They weren't like jungle colors, but they were that shape and that size of these things. And after I got used to that, then it switched, and I kept sliding down these vines of thorns that were just ripping me up to pieces again. All of these images were just total destruction of the flesh.
First thing I do when I'm starting to connect with my space again, I'm starting to become more conscious, I'll sit up, I'll kneel, and I'll sit in front of a mirror. And this is where I start working on this connection with reptile thing, because the weird thing is, when I look at myself in the mirror during one of these ceremonies, I don't recognize myself as such. I understand that this is the body that I'm in, but I don't really feel like I have any necessary ownership over it. It's just the vessel that's helping me experience this life. So I don't see myself, I don't recognize myself until I look right into the black in my eyes. And then it's like, oh, there I am.
I said, is it okay to be scared? In front of everyone, I said, is it okay to be scared? And he said, yes. He said, something would be wrong if you weren't scared. Why were you so scared? My mother and my brother are very religious, Brian, and their own prejudices and fears had started to manifest before this. They were sending me messages. My mom was sending me a message sent me like a long email saying this is witchcraft and it's of the devil, and my brother sent me a message saying in a very with biblical overtones saying, I tell you somberly, this will only increase your sorrow. And I used to be a fundamental Christian until the age of 23, and those thought patterns and belief systems had been implanted so deeply in my psyche that there was still a deep-rooted fear that I was doing something wrong, that this was not right and it was against God. At this point, I was starting to get paranoid. I was looking around and I was saying to people, doesn't this remind you of that Heaven's Gate cult? You remember that cult of about 10 years ago when that crazy guy took everyone, he made them all put on a set of Nikes and a purple t-shirt. When the Halley's Comet was coming, they drank some poison, and he said that some spaceship was coming to get them. Okay. Now at this point, I remember standing around looking at people, saying to them, this has all the recipes of a large-scale cult suicide. We're 1,000 miles from home. We're all kind of freaking out. We're all on strong drugs. We're in the sun. We've just taken ayahuasca yesterday. Ron could tell us anything. He could tell us he was the second coming of Christ and that he was taking us away in a spaceship tomorrow night, and we would believe him.
Okay,
and
so you started tripping out.
I started tripping out. Some people found this funny. Other people didn't want to be around me. We're sitting down. We're all chatting a little bit, pouring the medicine. It's time. Then he turns off the light. It's pitch black. Lightning flashing up, so loud, rain so loud you couldn't hear him singing his Icaros. A mad scientist with all his sacred potions and the rain coming down and the candlelight and the storm, and the ceremony was powerful. The ceremony, he had ordered a gong, a huge gong that he had mounted on a frame. He was doing like some weird tune, like there was a rhythmic thing to the gong. Like it wasn't just random him just whacking on the gong. It unleashed some kind of energies, it dredged things up from the pits of our souls. People started retching. It's not like a little vomit, like, oh, I ate something bad. Ugh. It's people going like, I have to tell the story. People were going like,
yeah.
puking like that, like puking like the most demonic, evil sounds you have ever heard in your entire life. So people just started retching, and this gong was, I mean, I had to put my fingers in my ears because it was so loud and so intense.
The gongs, the retches.
The gongs, the retching, the ayahuasca. And then I started to have these profound insights. One of them was that human beings are hybrids of alien and primate DNA. I don't know where this came from, but I just knew it to be true. I was like, it is what it is. I was looking at everyone in the camp. I could see that they were alien. I could see that there were different strains of alien DNA that had been synthesized with primate DNA. I could see like, oh wow, she's a more insectoid species of alien, and he's a more feline species of alien. And at this point, I'd started to freak out a little bit. I was like, I hadn't eaten, my blood sugar was low. I was like, I had already started to think, Nick, you have really pushed it too far. Now you're in your quest for whatever it is you're looking for. I remember looking at this one girl, and I just looked at her and I went, you are a goddess! And I ran up and I picked her up and I started running around the camp. The camp descended in madness, Brian. I couldn't make this up. It descended.
That's horrible.
It was horrible. It descended into madness, but I was still very, very paranoid. I was very paranoid. I started to see everyone's ego. People in the camp started to have little arguments. It was weird. Strange little arguments started to break out, and it was an ugly thing, dude. I could see the worst aspects of myself. And when I'd look at someone, I would see their ego on their face. I couldn't see their heart. I could only see their ego. I was just trying to calm my mind, let go of the fear, just breathe deeply, just breathe into this experience, preparing myself for what was coming. And then he started to sing. For those of you who don't know, Ikros are called the Songs of Power, and they're actually alien in origin. They don't come from this planet. They were brought to this planet by aliens, and they would. What they do is they start the magic of the plant working in your body. They call the spirits of the forest and the spirits of the jungle, and they begin the process working. Ron sounded like the cross between a Gregorian monk and a gremlin.
Okay.
I will try. I can't remember the words of the songs, but it was something like Ayahuasca. And so he would start singing Ikaros like in this voice, terrifying. I mean, Ron's job is not to make you feel great, feel the beauty and love of ayahuasca. Okay. Ron's job is to dig into your soul and find the darkness and bring it out.
Okay.
So, but suddenly I started to feel very relaxed, and I started to slump in my chair. My hips slid forwards and my shoulders slid back, and I started to slump. And then the magic, the medicine began. And then suddenly I felt an entity, like I remember Aubrey Marcus spoke of a giant spaceship that looked like it was made out of feathers and a bunch of strange things. This was similar, but it was a living entity that was made out of leaves and vines, and it was definitely an order of intelligence above mine. I don't know what it was. To this day, I'll never know what it was. I think it was some sort of spaceship. But it was some sort of entity that was floating over me. I was definitely scared, but something told me it was benevolent. I felt that it was there for my good, not my bad. It was there to help me, not harm me. And it got real. My head just snapped back. My head snapped back, and my tongue stuck out, and my jaw opened as wide as it could possibly open. And I realized that I was doing this to allow this entity to interface with me. So if you can imagine, for those of you who are watching, I was lying back like this, right? Like literally my mouth gaping open, every muscle in my jaw stretching, my tongue sticking out, my eyes were probably rolling into the back of my head. And this thing started to work its way into my soul and my brain and my psyche, and just connected with me. And I just went with it. And I was sitting up in a crappy little plastic chair, and it had become a throne. And I'm still trying to figure it out, but I was either a king or a pharaoh. It was the phrase I keep thinking of is God King. I was some kind of God King and I was in Egypt, and I was looking out over the sands of Egypt, and I could see the pyramids as well. And I had been entrusted with the creation of a civilization, with the creation of the Egyptian civilization. That was my mandate on this planet. At that point, this was as real as you and I sitting here talking.
Okay.
It was in some dimension I was there.
Okay.
You know, I didn't ask for a helper, but I managed to stumble outside. And I was suddenly overwhelmed with the depths of my own madness, Brian. I really understand now how most people, myself included, are insane. And now at this point, it started raining, and I was utterly confused. Utterly confused. I couldn't figure out if I was inside or if it was raining or not.
Okay.
You know, I didn't know. I knew I was wet. At first, started sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
And then eventually it ended with me lying on the ground in like fetal position, whimpering. But then it got very scary. Then I became a kind of a creature with only mind. Like I had no body, I had no spirit, I was just mind. I was stuck in this mental realm. I didn't know what I was or who I was, I just knew I wasn't human. And I was stuck in this strange mental realm, and I remember I was trying to call up memories of being human, memories of my life, memories of what it was, and I kept thinking to myself, if a bright ball of fire comes into the sky, that's the sun, and that means everything is okay. That means I'm supposed to be here on this planet. And then I started doing yoga. I started doing weird yoga stretches to try and remember what a body was and what a body meant. And I remember we'd been told to breathe, and I managed to take a few breaths, deep breaths, and that made me understand, okay, I'm in something, I'm in some sort of vehicle. You know, I remember the vehicle doing this. I remember breathing was something that I'd done before. There was a girl I met on this trip, and we just ended up sitting next to each other most of the time. In that third ceremony, there was a point where she became a queen, an Egyptian queen. The name that keeps coming back to me is Queen Semiramis or Isis, like this. And I saw her sitting there, and she was the most beautiful goddess-like Egyptian queen I'd ever seen. And there's definitely, I'm pretty sure we were connected in another life. I'm sure we were connected in another life, or as another intelligent person in the camp said, we might have both been accessing another point in time in another dimension that was pretty similar. We'd both been in a similar frequency where we had crossed over, and we'd both been that king and queen, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And the most important insight I was given on that third night, we were having a very in-depth chat about the nature of reality in the world and what we were doing here. And in the ayahuasca journey on the third night, it showed me how Hollywood, there is so much truth in Hollywood that and then it showed me like movies like Prometheus, you know, about these stories of aliens coming and seeding our planet with their DNA. And it showed me Star Wars, bro. I understand why the Star Wars movies are so incredibly popular. It's nothing to do with the special effects, because the story the Star Wars movies tell, that is all happening. You know, there are other planets with aliens on, you know. So we painted our faces, and we all stood in a circle, and we chanted a few chants. Om was one of them, and then we chanted another chant. I can't remember what it was, but it was designed to open the heart. What I asked to have painted on my face was a circle, a perfect circle on my forehead with a point in the middle of it. The reason I asked for that is there's a movie called Watchmen, and the protagonist is a guy called Dr. Manhattan. He becomes like a Superman in the movie, like a god. He is disassembled in a nuclear accident, and then he reassembles himself somehow, and he draws that own thing on his forehead, and that becomes his symbol. And I don't know why, but the whole day I just kept thinking about him, and I just kept thinking I need to have this symbol on my forehead. Pretty insane, right? And I took the full cup, and we started the ceremony, and then it was a descent into madness. It became a descent into absolute madness. The final ceremony was on the day of the end of the Mayan calendar, December 22nd. That was the point for this whole trip. That's why we planned it around the 22nd of December. And during that day, there was a very strange feeling in the camp. I was scared as hell. That was the height. That was the apex of my fear.
Okay.
I knew something big was coming. I didn't know what it was, but you could feel there was an oppressive spirit on that camp. Something was coming. One of the people who was doing the ceremony, he had entered into a hell realm of some sort. He had also been lost in his mind, but in an even darker place than I had been. And he was wailing. He was just wailing, "Oh God! Oh God!" Wailing like that for about 20 minutes. And the energy became very dark. So there was a thick, negative energy in that room. I couldn't quite figure out who was doing this, but I knew we were all in hell at that point. We were all in some kind of hell. One of the guys next to me became possessed by some entity, and he started rolling around on the floor wailing, and then he started shouting, "I am God! I am God!" like shouting, screaming, and then cursing, like swearing the most vile curses and profanities and demonic stuff from his soul I've ever heard. I was so under the depths of the medicine, I couldn't figure anything out. I just knew I was terrified. I could sense the evil and the negative energy, and somehow I got the strength to stumble out of the Maloka. I don't know how I got out of there, but I got out, and I lost sight of what I was again. I started thrashing around in the dirt, Brian. Thrashing around in the dirt like a possessed animal. I don't know what was going on. To this day, I still cannot believe what I was doing. I was rolling on my back, like doing almost like jiu-jitsu on my own, like my legs over my head, just mumbling strange things. There was a point where Brian, I couldn't make this up.
Gotta drop it for us, man.
There was a point where I became a snake.
Okay.
I literally became a snake. My tongue started moving around in my mouth, doing the craziest things, and my vision, it became a strange, like almost like a fisheye lens field of vision, and my head started bobbing, and my whole spine started moving in this strange serpent-like manner.
Wow.
And I realized this is what a snake is like. This is what it's like to move as a snake through the jungle. You know, I couldn't make this up.
Was there any reason for that, or it just happened?
It was just trying to teach me. And the only way I can put it is that was the death of my ego. That was the death of what I was and the birth of what I am. But I was born in that jungle. Nick died in that jungle, and whatever I am now was born in that jungle. Also, this guy who had this psychotic episode, he had been thrown out of the temple, and he eventually, while I was writhing around like possessed, there was a very dark energy on him. He was still standing outside screaming, "I am God, I am God." And eventually, one of the guys on the trip, he had come outside and he was kneeling down, a guy called Sanjaya, an Indian guy. He was kneeling down holding my hand. He was just kneeling over me, and he was saying, and we hadn't got on very well on that trip, because he had a thing for Sarah, the goddess. She's kind of like his unrequited love, you know, and they're friends, but you know, he loves her, and she loves him as well, but not in that way. And so, because her and I had been becoming close, there was a negative thing between us, you know. We had this deep heart-to-heart conversation. I was just speaking from my heart, you know, just telling him things that I couldn't possibly know about his life, you know, and about him, and he was happy to hear them, and we bonded incredibly.
And how was the next day, and how was leaving the camp and coming back?
Strange. I felt like a stranger in my own head for a long time. At one point, I thought I'd lost touch with reality completely. You know, I was just like, when I woke up on that next morning, I was so confused. We were all walking around in a daze. If you had seen me the morning of that next ceremony, I was covered in mud. One of my shoes was missing. I was stumbling around the camp. We were all just stumbling around babbling, so happy it was over.
What do you say to, you know, your mom and your brother after this ceremony? You know, you just described everything you went through about how you were so concerned before. Mm-hmm. You know, what do you tell them now about what happened to you?
I know my brother, he's not a bad man. I know that he is in touch with God in his own way. His frame, that Christian framework is the framework through which he sees God. I called them all and I tried to impart this to them. I tried to start telling them the story, and when I did, he started saying, you were not the king of Egypt, it was all just a demon, and I couldn't talk to him about it. I realized I'm not interested in his opinion of ayahuasca. I'm not interested in his opinion of my spiritual path. I love him more than anything. But that is their fear. Their fear of ayahuasca belongs to them. It's not my fear, and I don't want anything to do with their fear anymore. This is my spiritual journey. There's no way it could be evil from the devil. It could be used in that way by a negative shaman, but ultimately ayahuasca loves us. It's here to help us as human beings. It's here to help us grow. It's here to help us develop. So I would say to my mom and my brother, do not worry about me. I was given healing in the jungle. I was born in the jungle. Don't worry about me.
It's interesting how they were, saying that you weren't really in Egypt and you weren't this pharaoh. And I think some people confuse sometimes the value of ayahuasca and the visions. And I mean, the things you see aren't always relevant. Like the things you see might mean nothing, but I mean, what I take away always is the way it changes your life afterwards. So someone might be like, Nick was a snake, and then that's why he goes down there. But you really go down there to confront the dark side of your personality.
And I was terrified. At one point, I was like, I'm not even going to do Love and Real with Brian on this. I'm like, how am I going to tell people that I was a snake, dude? How am I going to tell people that I've seen aliens and had a plant spirit connect with me? But this is really, there's no turning back now. My credibility and everything will probably be questioned from this moment forwards. But this is a story that had to be told. Ayahuasca is, if you're looking for some answers in your life, and I'm still looking, but now I look from a point of curiosity, not a point of need. I don't have to know what God is or where we came from. I'm just interested. If I continue the search, it's just from a point of curiosity.
Right.
If I have to drag you kicking and screaming, I know that you need to see this. Yeah, buddy, let's shake the world, man. Let's set the world on fire, Brian.